Well, Equal Education has repeatedly called on the Basic Education Department to provide meals to all qualifying pupils, whether they're attending school or not. And now the non-profit organisation plans to go back to court on the 20th of June to ensure that this happens. On Monday, the group filed an urgent application in the High Court in Pretoria against Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga and 8 provincial education MECs. The group said the department was in breach of a previous court order granted a year ago, which directed them to ensure that pupils receive a daily meal as part of the school nutrition program. Well, Equal Education is being represented by Section 27, whose communication officer, Julia Chaskalson, joins us now live via Zoom. Julia, thanks for your time. Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga has said that school feeding schemes will continue under lockdown level 4. What is the thrust of your main application, your new application to be heard on the 19th of July?
Great, thanks, Annika. Essentially, Section 27, representing EE and the school governing bodies of two Limpopo schools, together with the Equal Education Law Centre, were returning to court because government has failed to reach all 9.5 million learners who need the National School Nutrition Program for almost over a year now. We were in court this time last year about a similar issue when the National School Nutrition Program was suspended very abruptly. And essentially what we're saying is that by failing to reach all 9.5 million learners who need the school nutrition program, government is in breach of its constitutional obligations to learners by failing to provide them with a daily school meal. But this also violates learners' rights to basic nutrition, basic education, equality, and dignity. By the Department of Basic Education's own recent estimates, more than 1.5 million learners are going without daily school meals. And we know that child hunger is much higher now than it was before the pandemic. And we're receiving reports from families, from learners, from school governing bodies that learners are really struggling without these daily school meals. And this needs to change. Part of what we're saying in our court case, or in our arguments rather, is that government needs to develop plans for the National School Nutrition Program which are responsive to the new needs of the schooling system during COVID. We know that millions of learners are rotating. They aren't at school every day. Sometimes schools have to close because of infection outbreaks. But these learners, if they are at home, are still constitutionally entitled to a daily school meal. And government needs to come up with plans that are proactive and realistic in reaching all of those learners, even if they are at home.
Julia, I heard one of the issues is that learners couldn't get transport to schools to get the food that they needed, and in many cases it's the only meal that they receive on a daily basis.
That's correct. So over the past year, Annika, we have been engaging with the DBE and the provincial education departments, essentially imploring them to provide scholar transport for learners so that they can come into school and collect a hot meal and then take it back home. Because for many learners, this is their daily nutritious meal. We know that entire families are kind of struggling at the moment. We know that many parents or caregivers have unfortunately lost their forms of income due to the COVID-19 lockdown restrictions. And this means that without a school meal, it's one more mouth to feed, which puts the entire family under strain. So we're asking for the DBE and the provincial education departments to come up with plans, either by providing scholar transport for learners so that they can come into school on the days that they are rotated out, so that they can collect a school meal, or alternatively, for the department to develop systems of delivering food parcels to learners. We know that this is a really effective way of reaching learners on the days that they aren't at school, on the days that they're forced to be at home. But repeatedly, the departments have failed to kind of either use these suggestions or come up with alternatives that actually reach all 9.5 million learners who benefit from the program.
Julia, do they seem unable to facilitate the food parcels or any of your suggestions logistically, or is there a lack of will? I'm not understanding why they're not doing the basics.
So it's a good point, Annika. I think on the one hand, logistically, there are some challenges. The nutrition program is funded through a conditional grant, and departments have repeatedly said that they don't have enough money to provide food parcels to learners because it's a little bit more expensive to put together a nutritious food parcel than it is, a meal that they can prepare in bulk. But they've failed to motivate for more funds from Treasury to deliver food parcels instead of daily meals. Essentially, they've kind of continued as if it's business as usual, failing to take into consideration these new challenges that COVID has put on the South African schooling system. So I think on the one hand, logistical problems are a concern, but these shouldn't be insurmountable. You know, we've come up with alternatives, we've made suggestions, and there just seems to be no interest in doing anything differently with the National School Nutrition Program, when in reality, we need the program to be responsive. We need it to, you know, reflect the realities that learners are facing now. And it's unfortunate that learners are likely to continue rotating or using these differentiated timetabling models for quite a long time further. So, you know, in this new reality, we need the political will to actually make sure that learners are getting the meals that they need.
Julia Chaskalson from Section 27 trying to urge and actually force the Basic Education Department to get those food parcels or at least those nutrition schemes back up and running for so many pupils who desperately need that food.